Here we are back to the basket garden, which looks just a little bit different every year. Now this year what's blooming, what's growing, are the sedum. They've been in here for quite a while, and you'll notice how that sedum is splitting, sort of spreading apart down the middle. Well, the way you can prevent that, I should have done it myself, is to break your sedum off before it gets this tall. You just break off the tops of your sedum. Probably you could go 10 inches down. Break them off and just go plant them in another garden. And if you'll do that all the way around your plant will stay more upright and it won't split like that in the middle. I just completely forgot to do it, and so I have a little empty spot there in the center, but I think I can plant something else right there in the middle, and I think I just might do it. So what's blooming in here this year, what's growing, you've got your bee balm in the back. Bee balm is a perennial which starts to bloom in late June here in zone 7. As you can see, it gets pretty tall. It comes in purples, maroons. Some of them have double flower heads on top, and the bees love these. This is definitely a bee lover plant. The phlox are beginning to bloom right next to them. Also a beautiful cottage garden plant, which is a perennial. I have 8 phloxes in here. So far, those are the only ones that are blooming. Well, with the exception, we've got some white ones here. Phlox come in purples, pinks, blues, deep purple, pale pink, and basically the pastel colors. And we have a lot of those. They get pretty nice and tall too. The Oxide Daisies have already seen better days, and now they're dropping seed, which I always welcome. The astilbe is pretty much done. The yellow primrose that was in here has already bloomed, and when they do bloom, you can either let them drop a lot of seed, or you can just cut them right down to the bottom, and they'll regrow again. These are perennials as well. Snow on the mountain, but what I'm really proud of as well are these little Canterbury bells. You can see them dispersed in here. They're still pretty short, but these are the ones that I grew in my trays from seed back in, I believe it was February. They are really slow growers, but that's because they're perennials and they just don't take off like annuals do. But I've got them, oh my goodness, I think I've got about eight of them in here. I've got this plant, comes from a bulb. It's called a liatris, and they start to bloom from the top down. They're just beginning to bloom. I've seen them in purples and I've seen them in whites. We've got some hardy geraniums that I planted from roots. They're just now starting to pop up. And some things I'm experimenting with in the back. Also, this rose, this crazy rose right here, was part of the wattle fence that I used, and it's actually now a living plant. I really don't like it there. I think it looks kind of weird, so I'll probably cut that down because I don't want a big blob of a rose growing right here at the edge of this garden. But this is pretty much a perennial cottage bed right here, and it's pretty consistent every year. It really looks nice no matter what you put in it. Now these are new plants that I also grew from seed in trays, and they are verbascums. Verbascums should come to be about 6 to 8 feet tall. But right now, as you can see, they're just still hugging the ground. But I put them in the back here, obviously, because they're the tall plants. And growing up that little trellis right there is called an angel's bower clematis, which grows wild in our meadow. So I just transfer it over here. And another beautiful cottage plant that you can put as a backdrop, because it does get pretty tall, and that would be a butterfly bush. Also, not quite in bloom yet, but when this one blooms, it has, I believe, lilac colored blooms. So here we are, July 1st, and everything seems to be a little bit slow blooming this year. I don't know why. Usually June is my big month for color, but so far, this is all I've got. Oh well, that means I'll have something to look forward to. Now, right over here across the little walkway from the basket garden is another garden enclosed with a short rock wall. Lamb's ear. The lamb's ear's already bloomed, and as you can see, it's time to get out the clippers and get rid of these sort of like nasty looking heads, but I'm going to let them drop a few seeds first because they are really great seeders, and I love it that they self-seed little babies all over the place. And then we have the violets, and then we have some hardy geraniums, and we have some germander, which is an herb, and another nice grouping of phlox, this time purple, which a pretty interesting color combination here with the ground rose, which is kind of a coral. It's kind of a little bit brighter than I like, but my gosh, they look pretty nice together, I think. And then we have the wonderful crepe myrtle tree. What I love about crepe myrtle trees is the lack of bark on the trunks. It just is smooth and just a really interesting looking tree, which produces blooms. This one's pink, and we've just got a start on those blooms. And next to that, another rose of Sharon. One thing I've learned about cottage gardening, and I should have learned this a long time before I did, is that you really need flowering bushes and small trees in the backdrop of your cottage garden. It just gives you a nice structure, gives you that nice backdrop of color and form. You can't just depend on perennials and annuals. You really need to put in those little trees and bushes. My recommendations for cottage gardens would be butterfly bushes, the rose of Sharon. One thing I'm really trying to get growing in this one were hollyhocks, but I'm just not getting those hollyhocks. They just don't like this spot for some reason. They just don't like it. Hollyhocks would have been great up against that wall, but I'll keep trying until I get them. All in all, I think it's really very pretty, even though a whole lot of things aren't full of color at the moment. But the different shades of green make it really lovely. So that's this year's basket garden in the very beginning of June. This is a rose of Sharon, which is just beginning to bloom. And if you get up close to it, you can look at all those blossoms. This thing is going to be just loaded with beautiful blooms. You can see why it's called the Rose of Sharon. They look like shaggy little roses. They don't really have a scent, but the colors are pinks, reds, whites, and purples and violets. They grow pretty quickly, and I think they're just a beautiful plant for a background bush or a small tree in a cottage garden. They bloom in late June and July. Hello, handsome boy. You're looking pretty good today. This is the beautiful chaste bush. And this one's rather large, but it is about 5 years old. But just look at the colorful, beautiful purplish blue spires on this plant. It makes a fantastic backdrop for your cottage garden. Of course, this one is, as I said, rather large, so you might need to prepare for a lot of space if you're going to put one in. Takes a while to get this size, but you can also train this to be a tree. So this one is more of a bush. I have one in the front cottage garden that I'm training to be a small tree. You just can't beat that color. My goodness, look at that. Everybody loves lavender, but it's not always the easiest plant to grow for some of us, especially if you live in a humid climate like we do. But once you find the lavender that's good for your climate, you can pretty much be successful with it. And it's a fabulous perennial for your cottage garden. And of course, we all know the color and the scent. So wonderful. Coneflowers is just a great plant to put in a cottage garden. They grow to be about, wow, this one's about 4 foot tall. And they are perennials. They come in different shades, but the most common one you ever see is this purple one. And I just love this rusty cone head. The top there is just dramatic, beautiful. These will reseed for you, so once you get the plants established, you will have lots of little babies coming up every year. And they're an excellent cottage garden flower. And beyond those, you see the brown-eyed Susans, which are also really, really great self-seeders. So much, in fact, that you might get too many and you might want to pull them up. You can see a lot of brown ones here. They don't like really, really wet feet. In fact, a lot of rain will just kill them, and that's what's happening with some of these. We've had a lot of rain, and it's actually killing them down here. So I'll just have to cut those down to the ground. Another beautiful little self-seeder are the Oxide Daisies. These are basically wildflowers. They'll self-seed for you everywhere. After they bloom, if you want them to drop seed, go ahead and leave them, or cut them all the way down to the base, and they'll start to grow again from the base, creating a more full plant, and you'll get a second bloom from your Oxide Daisies. Globe Thistle is my new favorite bulb. And like most of these allium bulbs, they multiply underground, so every year you get more and more and more. This is my first year with these, but I just love that color. And they're stately. They're about 2.5 feet tall. They start out with a green head, and then it just turns more and more purple. I don't know, purplish maroonish. And then you have this nice fuzzy little topper. I just think these go great in any garden. I'm going to start putting these in the cottage gardens. Right now they're in the potager. I'm definitely going to get a multitude of bulbs and put them all over next year. If you're not familiar with this plant, let me introduce you to Baptisia. This is a member of the pea family, and it is got the most beautiful blooms on it. Just look at how pretty they are. They're just great in an arrangement, a flower arrangement, or just leave them in your garden to enjoy. I planted this at about a little 3-inch pot when I first got it, and oh my gosh, it's big and full right now. But it's taken about 5 years for it to get to this size. But it's well worth it. Let's just look at the beautiful color on these leaves. But if you love anything in the pea family, this is an ideal and beautiful plant. It only blooms one time in the year, and that is in May, which is where we're at right now. And we have it sitting right here at the edge of the potager. It really likes our climate here in East Tennessee.